Chapter 10. The Enlightenment Hoax. It's not only Christianity that attempts to persuade mankind into accepting a solution for the problem of our supposedly fallen nature. The same mistake is made in subtle ways by some modern spiritual teachers who are not associated with any religions, even by those who encourage people to think for themselves. Consider an author who is by no means a man devoid of insight, and whose work is well worth studying, despite what I'm about to say. Eckhart Tolle, author of The Power of Now, 1999, classifies human beings into two categories: the enlightened, those who view themselves as the formless essence of being, and the unenlightened, those who see themselves as individual egos. It's the haves and the have-nots, the saved and the lost. In essence, he is saying, there is something wrong with the human race, and I have the fix. What Tolle fails to see is that conflict is a natural fact of life. Thus, pain and suffering of one kind or another are unavoidable. If we are lucky, we may minimize these factors, but we have no ability to extinguish them for the simple reason that we are not in control of everything that life throws at us. Tolle's worldview is essentially an attempt to make heaven on earth through insulating oneself from pain and suffering. He achieves this by suggesting that we identify our true self not as the individual mind, but as being, the collective essence of everything. So, while all manner of unpleasantness is occurring in the mind, it is not happening to the real you that is observing the mind. Admittedly, he's onto something. But then he mischaracterizes the value of this insight by asserting that the attainment of it is enlightenment or salvation. Tolle, like Christianity, is preaching that mankind is fallen, or in his terms, the mind in its natural state is insane, and he claims to provide humanity with the esoteric teachings that can rescue us from that unfortunate state. Frankly, Tolle's enlightenment can easily be dispelled by holding your hand in a flame or smashing your finger with a hammer. Then notice how difficult it is to remain an unaffected passive observer of your individual ego. To be fair, Tolle is not talking about suffering caused by the influence of the world upon our sensitive bodies, but self-created suffering, the mind running amok, generating undesirable emotional states. But we cannot really separate the sources of suffering so cleanly, because the only consciousness we know is consciousness at the mercy of both the mental state and the world beyond it. The emotions we experience, including negative ones, have been tailored to serve our survival interests over millions of years of evolution. In A New Earth, 2005, Tolle writes, quote, "Fear, anxiety, expectation, regret, guilt, anger are the dysfunctions of the time-bound state of consciousness." End quote. Tell that to the gazelle as it runs away from the lion. Fear, far from being a dysfunction, is the emotion that is keeping the gazelle alive. Fear floods the bloodstream with adrenaline, unlocking much-needed additional energy for the desperate sprint to safety. Fear is an essential living reality for animals. Anger is an equally useful emotion. When a wild animal draws back its teeth and snarls at an aggressive opponent, this is an effort at intimidation. If the enemy backs off, as is intended, further conflict is avoided. If you think humans are some kind of special case, exempt from the trials that lesser animals face, then just imagine a zookeeper who carelessly lets a lion out of its cage during public visiting hours. A marvelously enlightened public apparently wouldn't feel the urge to scream or run. They would be living entirely in the present moment, not looking ahead with fearful expectation, not trapped in the time-bound state of consciousness. Perhaps they would choose to run out of pure pragmatism without feeling any of that pesky dysfunctional fear. But here's the most important observation. The person who is so terrified out of his wits that he manages to scale a 7-foot wall on pure adrenaline is the one least likely to end up as the lion's lunch. All thanks to fear. The time-bound state of consciousness is a rich state of consciousness, and the emotions that it provokes are entirely practical. We are able to reach back into a vast store of memories and put them to use in the present moment. We are also able to look ahead, visualize possible futures, and tailor our present behavior to cause or avoid particular outcomes. To give Tolle some credit, he is speaking about the unfortunate human habit of wallowing in the past and future while ignoring the present, the place where life is actually lived. By all means, break that habit. Meanwhile, there is still value in devoting some of your attention to the future. If I'm driving to a bank with the intention of committing armed robbery and I imagine a possible future where I'm staring out through the bars of a prison cell, the anxiety I feel is a powerful motivator for me to stop the car before I ruin my life. On the pleasurable side of the emotional spectrum, the anticipation one feels in looking forward to a special event infuses the present moment with delight. Recall how you felt as a child on Christmas Eve. Sometimes spiritual teachers, even those with large followings, can be profoundly naive about life and short-sighted about ordinary avenues of knowledge that would inform them of so much, in this case, biology. Tolle has little or no awareness of man's place in the animal kingdom, or the predicament that all life faces. He speaks from the false perspective that most religions speak from. Man is not just an animal, man is special, and man needs saved from something that has gone wrong with him. I know what it's like to experience insane emotional states as much as anyone. I once found myself unable to sleep because someone in my life was taking liberties that I was not happy about. The matter was trivial, and in the beginning I was only slightly irritated about it. This feeling was urging me to take action in the form of a confrontation. And it would have been a mild, well-mannered confrontation designed to get the person to change his behavior towards me. But I wouldn't allow myself to do this because the social situation was complicated. So I bottled the emotion up. The end result, after a period of time, was me lying awake at night, obsessively thinking about the person and feeling enraged over something that was relatively unimportant. The problem here is not that the ego is insane. The problem is that we've been culturally conditioned to deny our emotions their proper expression. We are expected to live politically correct lives and never do anything to risk offending anyone. So we suppress our true nature, and the frustrated emotion mutates out of all proportion. This is why we're so obsessed with sex, particularly Christians, because they're the ones who make the biggest fuss about suppressing that side of human nature. Suppression fuels obsession. The root of the problem is not the mind itself, as Tolle thinks. The mind behaves insanely as a reaction to our misguided attempts to force it to conform to unnatural ideals of behavior. Much as I have benefited from some of Tolle's legitimate insights, the foundation of his message is merely a repackaging of salvation. He is playing the same game, perhaps unconsciously, that religions have played for millennia, convincing the human race that there is something inherently wrong with it, then offering a unique fix. The reality is that nothing went wrong with the human race. Everything is as it's supposed to be. You were given individual consciousness for the purpose of experiencing individual consciousness, not to spend your days attempting to reconnect with an all-encompassing blissful oneness. Individuality was dispensed to you so that individuality might be experienced, or else it would not be. The whole universe appears to us individuated, one object divided from another, given substance in space and time. Why seek to escape from this? Why would I want to insulate myself from my individual mind, when that mind is capable of experiencing so much pleasure as well as pain? And if I subdue the latter, do I not also lose the former? The need to be free from pain, suffering, hunger, adversity, conflict, sin, this is the ultimate itch that can never be scratched. Understand that it is this very wishful thinking that can form the basis of a spiritual teacher's sales pitch to you. But you can't build a successful worldview on ideas that don't accurately reflect the nature of the world as it reveals itself to us. When you see through the false claims of authoritarian religion and make your exit from it, this is only the first step on a difficult path fraught with pitfalls. Abandoning one religion can leave behind a void that begs fulfillment elsewhere. Some spiritual teachers play the role of recapturing such wandering souls with a fresher-smelling pack of half-truths. Only when you reach the point where you understand the depth of the statement, "There is nothing wrong with the human race just as it is," will you finally be free from the snake oil salesman. What about me and my claims? Am I yet another of these spiritual teachers trying to tap into your need and sell you a solution? No. Unlike many others, I do not claim to possess an ideological endpoint. I have not attained a special state of enlightenment, nor am I free from suffering, nor am I content all the time, nor am I even ethical all the time, even by my own standards. What I am offering you is more akin to an experience of initiation, to borrow a term from magical orders and secret societies. The words enlightenment, awakening, liberation, salvation all imply a singular, once-for-all time change that occurs within you at a particular moment in your life, splitting you into you before and you after, and separating you from the ordinary herd of the unenlightened, asleep, enslaved, and lost. But initiation is something that happens by degrees. Gaining understanding of a mystery forms a stepping stone to the probing of further mysteries. And the philosophy I propose in this book is probably not a meal you will be able to eat in one sitting. It certainly wasn't for me. It took years to digest. When you learn to read in school, you are essentially being initiated into a new way of interacting with the world. We take this ability for granted, but pause for a moment and imagine the difficulties experienced by an adult who has been denied this skill. Not only is the general administration of life made much more problematic, but a massive avenue of further education is walled off. Learning to read is a first initiatory step that can lead in all kinds of directions. Many initiatory experiences later, including basic arithmetic, algebra, calculus, just to get the ball rolling, one might end up as a theoretical physicist, possessing an ability to understand the universe in a vastly different manner from the layperson, for the simple reason that he has been initiated into mysteries that are beyond the comprehension of most of us. Becoming initiated enriches life and opens new avenues for further enrichment, but at the same time, there is nothing particularly wrong with you as a human being if you remain uninitiated. It is like the choice of being stranded on a desert island with or without the prior knowledge of how to make fire. You'll survive either way, but in the former scenario, you'll be much better off during the experience. So, if you would rather close this book and devote your time and energy to becoming, say, a skilled guitar player, that is an entirely valid choice. Nobody needs the insights provided in this volume. They are there to enhance your life, but you will have a life with or without them, and you may end up doing exciting things with your life that I wish I had done with mine. I am not here to offer a secret that will save you from all the difficulties of material existence, or relieve the incessant itch to become awakened. All I offer is an improvement to the quality of your consciousness. Similarly, if you study Eckhart Tolle's teachings with a view to improving your consciousness, you will benefit from them. But they can't turn this mundane life into everlasting uninterrupted bliss. Profound eureka experiences are available, and I've had my share of them, but the long-term integration of an esoteric truth into one's life experience is never as exciting as the initial moment of discovery. And once we have sufficiently mined the many avenues of human knowledge for treasures, fresh insights tend to become less frequent. The subtle danger is that one can become a spirituality addict, always lusting for the big insight that will blow his mind to such a degree that he will feel like he is floating on air forever. Instead of viewing knowledge as a means of improving consciousness, he is simply interested in getting high without drugs. He misses the initial high that he experienced, so he wants it again and again, and if possible he wants it permanently. David Icke, a spiritual teacher and conspiracy theorist, has written around 20 books in just over 2 decades, catering to this sort of addict. The early volumes, such as The Truth Vibrations, 1991, and Heal the World, 1993, were concerned with spiritual awakening and saving the world from our own destructiveness. Then, with The Robot's Rebellion, 1994, he introduced a conspiratorial element, a shadow government, the Brotherhood, that had been shaping the destiny of the world for millennia, suppressing the knowledge of who we truly are and planning global enslavement in a new world order. In The Biggest Secret, 1999, Icke proposed that the Brotherhood, now called the Illuminati, was actually a race of interdimensional reptilian entities in human guise. In Tales from the Time Loop, 2003, he used the holographic universe theory to provide a pseudoscientific explanation for human reptilian shapeshifting. In Human Race Get Off Your Knees, 2010, he claimed that the moon was not a natural satellite, but an artificial construction that was being used to project a false reality to Earth. Each new book attempts to blow the reader's mind in a manner that exceeds the previous release, and they are published year after year with alarming speed. The average lay reader can easily fall prey to the author's poorly researched claims. The reader comes to view himself as part of a special minority of awakened individuals. One's ordinary life of slavery to the system is viewed as part of an ancient war that stretches into other dimensions of reality. We are infinite consciousness, and the Illuminati will fail because there's a global awakening coming for all humanity. Inspiring stuff, except much of it is totally disconnected from reality. But no doubt the spirituality and conspiracy addicts are salivating over what David Icke's next book will reveal. I'm sure they will get their fix in due course. I watched the tail end of Icke's lecture at Wembley Arena in 2012 and was shocked by how much it resembled a Pentecostal church service. There was music and dancing. Icke spoke with the passion of a religious preacher. The crowd was in a state of bliss. I even spotted a young woman in the audience with her face tilted upwards, eyes closed, and one hand raised, just like church. But the problem with every high is that you have to come down from it. All those people at Wembley eventually went home, got up for work the next day, and their lives returned to normal. The glow of this seemingly spiritual experience faded. But for the addict there is always the next book or the next lecture. You may have heard the Christian saying, "There's a God-shaped hole in your heart that only Christ can fill." While I don't accept the solution, this statement does identify the very real sense of restlessness that permeates our lives. We rarely seem to be content with what's right here, right now. This gnawing dissatisfaction places our focus on the future. We feel that we always have to be getting somewhere. Desires mutate into cravings, and the void is never filled, no matter what we invest our time in. Some would define enlightenment as the conquering of that restlessness. I agree that it's good to overcome excessive restlessness. We suffer less when we learn to desire less. But in my experience, too little restlessness is as troublesome as too much. The most profound peace I ever experienced was in the wake of a small medical operation that I underwent in my mid-20s. I lay on the hospital bed for hours, doped on painkillers, staring at the opposite wall. The skin around my wound was horribly swollen, but oddly I didn't feel the slightest anxiety about that. The TV was on, but I didn't feel any desire to turn my head to look at it. And I didn't feel the remotest trace of boredom either. Although this was a chemically induced state of serenity, that doesn't invalidate it as a means of revealing the relationship between desire and suffering. I was privy to the direct experience of what so many spiritual seekers are striving to attain without drugs. All restlessness of the mind had ceased, leaving me in complete peace. Life felt absolutely perfect just as it was, with me merely gazing at a wall. Imagine this state of mind had continued indefinitely. My life would have amounted to little more than eating, drinking, urinating, defecating, and sleeping. Totally satisfied with every waking moment I would have lacked all motivation to create change. The book you're reading only exists because I felt restless enough to write it. Clearly, there is a balance to be found between too much restlessness and too little. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. If enlightenment means permanent uninterrupted serenity, it serves only to destroy your potential as a human being. The desire to attain a renewed state of being is entirely dependent on the conviction that there is something intrinsically wrong with human nature in the first place. No insight is ever going to flip that imaginary switch inside you that will illuminate your whole being and insulate you from all suffering. The search for enlightenment ends not with the seeker becoming enlightened, but with the realization that enlightenment is a hoax. Consider, what would a dog have to do to become enlightened? The question is absurd, of course. Enlightenment for a dog consists of being a dog. But I'm not a dog, you may object. I'm a human being. In such a sentiment, I sense the lingering ghost of Christianity's outdated anthropology, where man is God's special creation, fallen from grace and now attempting to claw his way out of that hole. But if we understand that we are animals, then enlightenment for a human consists of being a human. Be on your guard for anyone claiming they're here to fix the human race. It's merely the message of the cross in another guise. But it's the message that's broken, not us. On the other hand, I can understand why some have a particular attachment to terms like enlightenment, awakening, and liberation. Sometimes the process of grasping an elusive secret about life can be so sudden and dramatic that it really does seem as if there was you before and you after, especially if you've spent a large part of your life suffering under false beliefs. The inner change that took place in my own life at age 35 was striking. But I also understood that I hadn't solved all my problems, freed myself from suffering, or reached any sort of finish line. Use the terms enlightenment, awakening, or liberation to describe your own transition if you must, but don't fall for the trap of thinking of it as salvation. There is no new you, only an improved you, which is really a continually improving you, as long as you keep learning. In the quest for truth, insights are but stepping stones on a journey with no conceivable terminus. When you look for truth in this fashion, then the never-ending pursuit of it becomes an enjoyable and life-enhancing activity. But if you think of it as a quest with a definite ending called enlightenment, you will be increasingly frustrated as you fail to find it, or you will settle for an illusion and pretend that it works. The truth is, we don't need fixing. We were never broken in any fundamental sense. We should stop judging ourselves against an idealized picture of human nature that exists only in the imagination. Imperfection is reality, and we're perfect in our imperfection. How ironic that the real reason you need to go on a spiritual journey is to realize that you didn't need to go on a spiritual journey. But remember, the value of undertaking that journey is the value of that realization. The liberation that I experience is liberation from the burden of believing there's a special message somewhere out there that can save me, if only I can find it.